Cool. So we got everyone in. If anyone else wants to be a speaker, speak up at any point during this. It's just a conversation, so anyone can chime in. I just cannot make everyone a speaker at the same time. That said, we have with us BestCoderNA and cryptofish, who are both definitely going to speak on this as well.
Yep.
So I guess, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for having us, CoderNA and cryptofish. It's good to be here.
I mean, it's good that you were able to stop the Pangolin and Trader Joe fight for 1 hour, for how long this talk is going to go. But yeah, I think we set up this call as basically a response or follow up on the thread that you did, BCNA, on your experience working in Avalanche. So I think maybe that's also a great place to start, just to maybe give another summary of the points you summed up, the lessons you learned, and then we can speak in and comment, and everyone else once again is invited to comment as well.
Yeah, totally. So my name is Leo. I've been working on the Pangolin projects for a couple months now. Prior to that, I worked on the Snowball project, the Sherpa Cash project. And last week I posted a thread that got pretty popular. It was retweeted by Eamon about just lessons learned working in DeFi in the Avalanche space. And I covered a lot of topics. Not really on the development side, but more on the project management and community management side. Like, how do you run an effective community and project? And I went over a couple points about networking, about transparency, partnerships, governance. And I think to boil it all down, it's just about growing a really strong community within the project and within the ecosystem. So, the fact that competing dexes like Pangolin and Trader Joe can just come together in a talk like this, shows how effective projects are run. We directly compete as projects, but we do understand we need to grow this ecosystem together and work together to lift the tide for everyone. So that's kind of what the thread was about. What did you guys think of it, CoderNet and cryptofish?
Yeah, I'll go first. I really loved it, actually. I think that, so yeah, first of all, I'm cryptofish. I'm the co-founder of Trader Joe. And what I loved about it is, like, I think we need more conversations about that. You know how it is. Like, when you do AMAs, right? It's morely focused on the product. Like, people want to know what features will you have, what tokenomics will you have, all that kind of stuff. And like before all this, I was also a user, so I had like an impression of what teams were like the devs and stuff. But then now that I'm working on a project, I realize there's a massive disconnect between like what users think we do and what really happens behind the scenes.
And then if I should follow up on that, then I mean, of course, my position is a bit different than the two of yours. I'm not so involved with any of the projects, at least not directly. Of course, I speak to others, and I really just came in as a user as well. And I noticed, when Avalanche was still young, when our C-chain ecosystem was still young, in the Snowball finance Discord, I just came in and be like, I did not understand the smart contract, and I think BCNA, you were already there. I think Fish, you also worked on Snowball Finance at one point. And I just noticed that everyone is so super helpful, and everybody wants you to succeed when you use the app, right? And then I think that kind of just continued on. I made my first video at some point. I got really positive responses on that one. And then more projects I started engaging with, reaching out to ask questions to clarify so I would have it right for the video. The more I found that, everyone is really trying to help each other, and everyone is willing to, also look at each other's code and everything, and then people are discussing with each other. So I think the network is really quite strong, and it really helps also on my end, like I have to do videos, right? And if I know that at least someone is involved that I know from some other project, then I have a much better idea of how legit something is. Than if something comes in cold, and it really helps to have a network to also kind of just soundboard with, like if you will, just ask, hey, does this make sense to you? Can you do this cryptographically and everything? Because a lot of us just do not have all the skills required to do everything on blockchain.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to hear your point of view, because I feel like you're kind of the perfect middleman. Like you're very engaged with the community. You are like a user, so you're not technically you're not working on any projects. And you're also like part of these private group like Yak Friends, where you get to have contacts with like all the teams, developers, and all that kind of stuff. Like, what's been like your kind of, I don't know, insight to all this?
Yeah, so it's amazing to be able to, like I said, to soundboard with people. If you have doubts about anything, or if you think something is feasible or not, or just just have those conversations as well around the AEB bridge. Of course, we now got a newer bridge, but the old one was quite a pain. And like, what can we do to improve the experience? Like, can we, as projects together, set up to make it easier? And can I play a role in that as well? And if I have any ideas, it's really nice to kind of be able to translate in a way, as someone who is also reasonably new to DeFi, not so much cryptocurrency, but DeFi, yes. To be able to translate now, this is the part where they struggle the most, which may seem like a part that's not really part of your depth, but it can block some people, right? And it's nice to be able to be the voice for that sometimes. There was one really interesting point in your thread, BCNA. It was about transparency. Of course, crypto, in a way, started, at least partly for some people, to kind of step away outside of the system. But we've seen also that blockchain is very transparent in itself. As a project, like, how do you, like, can you talk a bit more about the transparency part of it?
Yeah, definitely. I'll touch upon transparency. So, in crypto, in DeFi, transparency really matters because it's all online. A lot of teams are anonymous. So, users need ways to get information about a project. On the technical side, they need to know, is their code safe? Are they building safe solutions that protect my funds and data? On the business side, they need to know, who are these people running the project and what kind of power do they have? Do they have the power to spend funds of the project, of the users, however they want? Do they have the power to turn off the project whenever they feel like, or change key components of the project without letting people know? There's just a lot of aspects that go into running a project, and that users need to know to feel safe using a product, investing in a token. And at Pangolin, we definitely try to provide all of that. And I know a lot of the best projects do as well, both formally through reports and just ad hoc through just being available, answering questions. I know Trader Joe does a great job at that. I see Yield Yak is on, and they're excellent at that too. And so that's kind of what I was talking about through transparency. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts too.
Yeah, I think learning how to manage your Telegram should be like a university course. I think that's like huge for running a crypto project. Like, for
Yeah.
example, like
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
to follow on with that, like in Telegram, the sentiment of your group, it always follows your token price, right? So when token price is good, like everyone's like happy, like they're all posting memes and stickers and stuff. And then once the token price dumps, suddenly all the tokenomics experts come out. They start saying, "Oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" Make some locking mechanisms. It's really tough. Like you have to. The way I see it, this is something that I've been working on, but the way I think my approach to this is like what I call assertive empathy. So you have to like you have to understand that these people obviously have invested in your project, so they're obviously anxious about, oh, token price is dumping, I'm holding these bags. So you have to be empathic in the sense that you understand how they feel, but at the same time, like they'll also give you a lot of ideas. Some of them are great, some of them are also just a little bit crazy. So you have to also like listen to what they say, take the good ideas on board, but also politely say, look, I don't think we'll do that. If it's not a good idea.
That's an amazing point, and actually, that is also one of the points from the original thread. I think that to listen to your users. Just to chime in, also just from my side though, and I want to encourage once again everyone who's listening in. If you want to say something, if you're about any of the topics, that you can request to be a speaker, and if I understand how to make you a speaker, I will make you a speaker, and then give your opinion as well. But I think also from the user side, one element that's very interesting about the transparency part is, a new app goes live, and whenever they're just live, the APIs are always through the roof. So you have people, aping in without, doing any due diligence. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Very curious. Sad that Roger isn't here to talk about that, because I think that man apes into everything. But it's a really interesting paradigm, right? Transparency and the gains chasing that we see in this space.
Quick question, Cedar. Do you invest like with your own personal funds in Avalanche projects, and which ones?
I actually hold something in most projects,
Okay.
if only as a result of me doing videos into a lot of them. I do use my own funds for that, right? So and I don't normally just immediately yank them out. So I have a little bit I think in almost every project, and sometimes I move some stuff around, sometimes I change some pools. But I like to be invested in everything. I think we've got a very great ecosystem where many apps, I think, can really go very far, and you're early now, and whatever it does, I don't pay too much attention to price, because I know I would suck as a trader, or at least I assume I would suck as a trader. So I'm just playing my role as investor and sitting it out, basically.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a terrible trader. Like I've been in crypto for 4 years now, and every time I try to get like complicated, do some high IQ moves, like, oh, I think this is gonna go up, it just never works out for me.
Exactly. So I just try to invest in projects that are very good. Long-term scalability is important for me. Get some community as well. Get some good people. Of course, a good team is super important in a project. And then just hold it, and then just don't look at the price too much. Of course, whenever the price goes up, I'm just refreshing my Blockfolio every day. And then as soon as it goes down, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Leo, I have a question for you. So now that you worked on Snowball, we worked on Snowball together, then also Sherpa Cash, and now you're working on Pangolin. Like, how does working at Pangolin compared to like the previous two projects?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's entirely different, and I'll tell you a couple reasons why. Pangolin's already a very established project. It's the largest on Avalanche by far. So there's a different dynamic. As a new project, as a smaller project, you're scrambling to grow and make connections and reaching out a lot. And at Pangolin, people kind of come to you, and now you're fielding a lot of requests from projects on the network, projects outside the network. You're trying to support Ava Labs, so it's a different role to play. It's almost feels like a local government role almost, because it is community driven. People vote on major decisions, so we're kind of supporting the ecosystem is how we feel when we're building. We're not trying to make Pangolin Moon or anything, although that's also a priority. It's more about supporting the projects around us and making sure everyone can grow. So on the good side, you get to meet a ton of people. You get to get insight into tons of processes and projects and things that you wouldn't normally know just working on a smaller project. And on the maybe less desirable side is just, you have to move a lot slower. Major decisions don't just go through a couple people. They have to go through a lot of people. And that's something that They go through the team, the broader team, the community, voting. It's good to move slow when you're at this size, but it does kind of slow down the innovation a bit. But yeah,
So
what about? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry. So let's say like you guys have a decision to make, right? Like how does it work? Like you know, I know there's you, Harry Seldon, Beamino, like will you guys just get together, have a meeting, and then have another meeting, and then discuss with, I don't know, other people in your team?
Yeah, so the process works like this. You know, when we want to make a decision that would impact the entire app, all the users. For example, we recently changed the way we add rewarded pools. You know, we usually ideate that within the team first, make sure it's a good idea to propose to the wider community. Then we'll get some feedback from people in our ecosystem contributing daily, and then we'll write a forum post to get it very public. Let's get hundreds of people looking at this, get their feedback and questions, and then we'll put it to a vote. And those are for the major decisions. Yeah.
Do you guys have meetings like regularly?
So since we're international in a lot of different time zones, we mostly communicate asynchronously, so through chat. But we'll try to sync up, one or two calls per day, just for 30 minutes. And we do have a weekly call that's always there. That goes for maybe an hour or two.
Wait, you have you sync up every day through like Google Meets or something?
Well, generally, there's some sort of topic that will be like, "Hey, this should probably be a voice call," and then we'll find a time that
Oh, interesting.
we can sync up on that. But other than that, we have like an hour meeting that usually runs 2 hours, scheduled every Monday. Yeah.
I see. That's very different to how we do things.
You guys mostly do chat?
Um, Mostly, yeah, but like, I mean, our team is small and, you know, well, actually, it's probably about the same size, but usually just me and Murloc, we just I'll just call him randomly on Telegram if there's like anything that we need to decide on, and then sometimes he's out, so like it's fine. He can take up the call and we'll just talk, but there's no like set meeting. Um, Saying that though, we have more people, so I've been wondering like what's the best way to do it? Like, should we have more meetings? But at the same time, having more meetings is kind of annoying to be honest. It's like you have to prepare things, and I prefer to do things like on the fly a little bit, like more spontaneously. With the I like to like people that are working with us. Like we have an intern, for example. Like we'll make sure that he's like looked after by someone. So he's like, I'll check up on him like regularly every few days to see how he's doing and stuff. And if it needs be, then we'll hop on a Discord call or something.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I'm definitely not in favor of meetings either. They're not that fun to just sit there and listen if it's not important. But once a week seems to be a good cadence for us. And similar question back at you. How has starting your own Dex been? That must have been an exciting experience.
Yeah. Okay. Where should I start? Yeah, it's been kind of crazy to be honest. I think. Well, okay. So for people to know, like me and Coder started off at Snowball, and actually, I think you were my boss, weren't you? Like you were the one who gave me the jobs. And I only did like a couple of small jobs. It was nothing big. Like I wasn't like a team member or anything. I was more of a contributor. And then I started contributing for PandaSwap when they first came out. Long story short, PandaSwap, like, I was very excited for it. It was like the new Dex. It was like very early on as well, like in March. So everyone was really excited about PandaSwap. And then on day one, they had like I ate in really hard, but on day one, they had like a bug. So I pinged their team members like, "Hey, I'm a developer. I can help you guys out. Let's try and figure it out." So I just got myself involved. And yeah, that was like I think that was like the time when I really learned about what really goes on in crypto projects. Um, so I guess I can be more frank about it because I don't think anything's active with PandaSwap anymore. But it was like the most traumatic experience for me. Like really, um, it was just incredibly traumatic. Like I got there and I kind of realized everyone there did not know what they were doing. So very quickly, like I had to just drive all the decisions and pretty much do all the work. And then I only stayed there for a week, but then after a week, I felt like I had stayed there for 3 months already. So after that, I was like pretty dead set. Okay, you know what? Like, it kind of gave me the confidence boost as well. Like thinking, okay, if this is what it takes to start a crypto project, then actually starting a crypto project is not that hard. So already I was kind of like thinking, okay, maybe, you know, I feel like there's a need for DEX that has different features. So I was already brainstorming with Murloc. But Murloc was not really taking it so seriously. He was like, oh, let's just do some project. It'll be like a side project, blah, blah, blah. And even until like June, for example, we were supposed to launch middle of June. So like 2 weeks before we were supposed to launch, like, he was kind of like just plugging away in his own time, like coding up Trader Joe and stuff. And I was, in my mind, I wanted to make it go big. So I was thinking, okay, we have to start marketing, right? Because this is a lot of it is marketing. Like you have to start tweeting, you have to start posting content, you have to give people compelling reasons why Trader Joe. I was also saying like we have to start meeting other projects, like contacting them in private DMs, setting up like voice calls and all that kind of stuff. And I think like the reality didn't hit until I would say a few days before launch, like when we released our UI, and then people were getting really excited. And then when we launched, we're like, oh god, like I think we had like 8 million TVL on the first day, and then that's when like Murloc really realized, okay, you know what, like we actually might make it. So I would say that like for me personally, I felt like we could make it, and it was going to be a lot of work, but I felt like we could make it. But for Murloc, I think he needed more time to really process the whole like situation.
Small,
Yeah, that. Go ahead,
sorry,
CytoNet. Go ahead.
small technical note from my side. I think I only just now turned on the setting that allows other people to speak. So if you've been trying to speak and not been getting a speaking slot, then I apologize. Please try again. I see we have a couple of other projects in here, of course. I think Rose, you're probably on the Olive Cash account. I see Yak, I see Quason, of course. I know you're working on something, and Star for Marker is here. I saw Ku briefly, but I don't think they're here anymore. If any of you ever want to speak up, it should be possible for you to try. And for the rest, I was enjoying your conversation. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Awesome. Thanks, CytoNet. And yeah, if anyone wants to chime in, you just hit the request speaker button. I also want to give a shout out to Jamari. We've been talking about Snowball a bit. It's where Cryptofish and I got our roots. And Snowball's a really strong project. They do a lot of things right, best practices with time locks, multi-sigs. And I think we're a little spoiled, like Cryptofish said. Since we started on Snowball, we thought, hey, that's the caliber of projects that build crypto. But you kind of come to realize that there's a whole spectrum of quality out there. And it's really impressive to see how the Avalanche space has grown. Like Cryptofish said back in March, the biggest hyped projects were like a Panda Swap type project, whereas recently we've seen some huge players come and build in the space. An example is Banky for a lending solution. They are incredibly well funded, very professional. I think they're going to be really big. So, just want to comment on how the space has evolved, and maybe we can get some opinions from CytoNet and Cryptofish about that. Like, what projects were you into 3 months ago versus now, and how have you seen the evolution of the space?
Yeah. Sorry, you go, CytoNet.
Sure. So three months ago, we were in April, I guess, end of April. No, start of April, end of April. I think somewhere in April was when I started to sense kind of in the community that another DEX was launching, and people started becoming a little bit more critical. I think when Panda launched, everything was super exciting. Penguin, which isn't technically a DEX, launched and still super exciting. And then more came, and it started to go a little bit. Okay, but what do they do different? I think there was a little bit of a inflection point there from okay, we're definitely aping into everything we're seeing. I think we've had by the time the first rock pool in Phi, I think they were called, And of course, Panda had their issue as well. So I think people started becoming a bit more hesitant in a way where they were going to put their money. And then, of course, you had that entire market downturn from May onwards, just after that. And I think the amount of new stuff launching really, also just went way down. There wasn't so much new things launching, many things planned more. So I think, a lot of projects went into more of a building mode. And from my side, it was a little bit relaxing because I remember like the last week I did before the market turned down and everything went a bit more quiet. I did like maybe 3 videos in like 24 hours or so at some point. So quite happy to have a little bit of a break. But at the same time, I can tell right now that I'm starting to get quite busy again. So if that's a sign of the bull market coming back, then I have good news for everyone. But we don't know, of course.
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to launch Trader Joe like early June, and I think a lot of it was just down because like in early May, for example, it was still bull market conditions, right? So we were just like in a rush. Okay, the market's still good. Let's try and launch ASAP. Um, and in hindsight, it was a good thing that for us at least that the bear market happened because we had much more time to think about what we were gonna do. So we really thought about, okay, the UI, like, let's make it different, let's put more effort into it. Let's because around the time when we were planning to launch, people were already saying like, oh, there's too many dexes on Avalanche, like we've had so many and blah blah, like what are you guys going to do differently? So we had to really think about like our game plan more, like what are we going to do differently? And I'm glad that we waited because if we launched like a month earlier, I'm quite certain that the product that we launched would not be as different as it is now. Like it wouldn't be different enough for people to want to use it.
Also want to give a quick welcome to Jamari and Quintin, who are joined as speakers. I'm assuming you did on purpose. So was there a point where you wanted to chime in on something?
Hello, guys. Sorry for my French accent. Was wondering about. I'm a project owner, basically in Web 2.0.
That you use in your experience with Avalanche that you have found most helpful, most enjoyable, most useful for you. For example, I know for me, like it was written, and now that we have forking, it's that like that.
Sorry, I couldn't really catch anything.
Yeah, sorry, that didn't come through very clear, Jamari. He also interrupted Quentin a little bit.
So I will go again. Did you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay, thanks. So I was saying, my question is about your experience working in Avalanche and moreover in the blockchain field. I feel like I'm looking for product owner position, so basically the head of the product, and I feel like most of the projects, there is already one guy who have an idea and he has a vision about the product and he just need dev to build it. So what's your thought about this?
Yeah, good question. I think you know what? I think a lot of people have this misconception that devs are the scarce resource. And in my experience, devs are not the scarce resource in crypto. I think the scarce resource is actually like very good business development and marketing people. It's very common to find like devs who can build, but they might lack the kind of business development skills or personality you need to develop partnerships. This kind of chimes back to what Leo was saying, right? Like, I think a big part of running a project is the business development stuff, like being able to develop relationships with different projects, partnerships, and stuff. So there's actually a lot of Discord channels they're out there that you can find crypto devs, which I'm happy to share later. But they're actually not the scarce resource. I think that what's important is like, okay, obviously having a good idea is good, but you also need to be able to like be the kind of person to engage other projects, setting up meetings, presenting yourself professionally. I think that's very important. I think that's actually a very underrated skill. Like, just to give an example, like when we started, before we launched, we're an anonymous project, right? So we reached out to pretty much everyone, like every project out there right now, like Snowball, even CedarNet, Omer, Roger Liu, even the Ava Labs guys. And we came with a presentation deck, like a pitch deck. And the first thing that people noticed was they said to us, like, wow, you guys are like the first project to actually present to us a pitch deck. Like, I think it's very important to have that kind of professional image. Like, you can be anonymous, but you still need to have that kind of professional feeling that you give to other people. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for the first part, and the second part was interesting too. So yeah, I will pop to your DM for the Discord.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just want to offer a couple thoughts on the product owner role in DeFi and in crypto. So, in DeFi, your main product is basically code, right? We're all building smart contracts, Web3 apps. So as a product owner, I think it's really important to understand, what is possible and what is not possible at a high level, technical level. And also, what is the cost and trade-offs, right? Are there security issues? Is it easy to build, hard to build? So, product owners are in every industry, and in this industry particularly, I think product owners have to be, savvy technically is what I would recommend. So just getting up to speed on the smart contracts, how DeFi projects interact, and things like that. Does that help a little bit for your question?
Yeah, a lot. Thanks.
I also want to welcome Notex editor and Marvin as speakers. If you have anything to add, feel free to speak up. I also saw we had some people chime in briefly. If they want to chime in again for something else, they're more than welcome to.
Hey guys, welcome.
I just thought I needed to request to listen in, but I'm definitely open ears and looking to learn about Avalanche, and I'll see if I have some questions. Thank you so much.
All right, awesome. If there's no one else having any question right now or any comment on anything, maybe an interesting thing, Leo, is from your thread as well, never sacrifice security for speed. And you've, of course, talked about, you and Fish have talked about, you're quite different. Pangolin, in a way, is slower, and Trader Joe is faster. Have you, Leo, ever made a decision kind of in your core group of 3, and then as soon as it came to voting, kind of had to redirect course? And for Fish, the same question, but the other way around. Did you ever make like an early decision that you had to readjust later based on community feedback?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to recap, one of the points I brought up in a thread I posted about, lessons learned is just speed versus security and safety. And security and safety can mean both on the technical side or even on just kind of the process side, protecting users from changes. And it's such a competitive and fast-moving space. It's understandable why projects want to build quickly, push it out the door, and see immediate benefit for their project and their users. But the trade-off is, if you made the wrong decision or there's a bug in your code, things can go very wrong. Some projects never recover from that. An example is the Rune network, or the Thor chain network, just had 2 sequential hacks back to back. I think it was something like $5 million and $8 million were stolen because they wanted to, build their network quickly without going back and kind of doing the audits and testing. So specifically at Pangolin, we do run into this all the time. We've had staking on our roadmap since we joined the team a couple months ago, and it hasn't been implemented because the solutions we come up with require some complex smart contracts that would hold user funds, and that needs audits. And DeFi and crypto is so popular right now. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but to request an audit get in line with the dozens of other projects trying to get audited, having them look at it and go back and forth. For the reputable companies, some of them are booked out until next year even. So it's kind of just these bottlenecks of, as the biggest project on a network, you have the responsibility to represent all projects in terms of how safe and secure you are, so that when new users come, they know this is a good network to be on. Binance Smart Chain has kind of a sketchy reputation right now because every other week you're seeing very large sums of money getting exploited, generally through flash loans or something like that. So to sum up the point, at Pangolin, above all other projects, we definitely need to make sure we are the most secure. And I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts too.
I'm going to take a slightly contrarian view and say it depends. Because, obviously security is important, don't get me wrong. But if you have to wait a year to get a contract audited, then whatever that product was going to be, it might not be relevant anymore. There's always going to be a pressure to release stuff. Like, crypto just moves so fast, right? Even a month is a long time. So I think I think it depends, what you're implementing. Like lending strategies, okay, you definitely need to be really secure. Staking stuff, I think, depends how you do it. I think that a bug can be devastating, but not as devastating as, say, a bug in lending. Say, for example, like SushiSwap, when they implemented double rewards like a couple of weeks ago, the first double reward partner was Alchemix. And what happened was there was a bug. So they caught it and then they just immediately took it down. So in my mind, that's okay. They were quick to implement it, and they were also quick to catch it, and they managed to alleviate the situation fast enough so that not many people were wrecked by it. But as I said, going back, I think it depends. I think obviously security is very important, but you also have your users. They want to have features, and you also can't ignore that. That's very important, because if you don't implement things fast enough, then you will fall behind.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Balancing being pragmatic and being safe, and there are ways to do that. For example, forking an audited smart contract and just changing some pointers, that's a very safe practice to add new features. I think that's how Trader Joe was built. They're using very safe SushiSwap contracts, right? So they don't have to reinvent the wheel and potentially introduce vulnerabilities that way. It's just the nature of smart contracts is once you deploy it onto the blockchain, you can't touch it anymore. So you just kind of have to make sure they're absolutely right, unless you want to do the whole, take it down, have users migrate their funds and go to a new one route. So it's a very good point by cryptofish about finding this balance between being quick and pragmatic versus being safe.
Crypto Bear, I see you've been joining as a speaker a couple of times. I'm not sure if you have a point you want to share, or my network may be lost. I'm not sure. Is everyone still there? I got a network error.
Myself, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So weird network error aside, a little bit maybe on governance. We already talked about it a little bit. Of course, your things are very different. Pangolin allows everybody to vote, and basically recently it introduced kind of a new, also something for people to vote on, that basically said if a project meets certain requirements, we do not need to vote on the pool weights. And of course, Snowball is in that way very different, where you can still vote, I believe, on all the pool weights. And you shared in your post, Leo, governance is hard because how do you keep people engaged? And also, how do you people in general? How do you keep people engaged across so many different protocols? And can you both maybe share your thoughts on like how to do governance right? And then maybe I'll chime in with my opinion afterwards as well.
Yeah, sounds good. This is a great topic about governance, decentralized projects. So I'll give some thoughts and I'll let Cryptofish share his and anybody else. So Pangolin's unique because it started off with governance right away, well, almost right away, where the values were this project is community driven. All the tokens went to the community, and all decisions need to be voted on. So that's a very fair way to run a project, and a lot of people, they like that idea. It's very special that with the technology of blockchains, of DeFi, you can run $1 million projects in a decentralized way like this. So it's beautiful in that way. If I were to start a project from scratch, I think I would actually wait several months, maybe half a year before adding full governance, just because as a new project, you kind of guess at what's most optimal when you start, but you need to be able to pivot quickly as well as you test your parameters, right? Like your emissions, just so many parameters that go into a project that need to be tweaked. And if you have governance in place already, it's a bit slower to have to convince or try to get on board hundreds, thousands of people. Whereas without governance, you can kind of pivot more quickly. So, I'm definitely glad that Pangolin has succeeded with its current model. Although, there are trade-offs to both, for sure. What do you think, Cryptofish?
Yeah, I think that governance is definitely important, but at the beginning, it just slows you down so much. Like, writing forum posts and all that kind of stuff when you should be developing stuff. I think, yeah, as you said, I think the optimal strategy is to implement it maybe 3 to 6 months after you launch with like new features and stuff. And I think there was a discussion about this in one of the like private team chats, and one of the Yak guys were saying this. They were like, and I kind of agree with them. I think that personally, the best example of this is like Ethereum. Like they're very DAO centric, like community. Like everything is very DAO based, and I just think that Avalanche is still way too early to have DAO stuff. I think that once we hit a certain inflection point, then DAO like mechanisms, governance, this becomes a bigger thing. But at the moment, because we're so young, I think you're better off prioritizing growth more. And my feeling as well, because I've asked this in like our own Telegram groups, and some people said, "Look, don't do governance so early. It's going to slow you down." And I think that people, especially early investors, they care more about seeing growth, seeing new features, building development, rather than being able to vote stuff. So that's like kind of my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, so if I'll follow up on that, I think governance is a very interesting use case for a token in a way. I feel like fairly there's definitely projects out there that have a quote unquote governance token just for the sake of having a token that otherwise they don't really have much of a utility idea for. And it's very interesting because depends what kind of questions you're going to ask your community, right? What kind of questions they are expecting to be asked. For myself, I do not care too much about voting, like about small changes, like how much pool is going to weigh in your distribution of your tokens or whatever. Of course, I would rather not have that, a single person can determine to put it all in the pool that he's in. But I'm happy to, most of the time trust the team that basically runs a project that I've invested in it, right? And especially with Pangolin, where in a way we picked our own team. Of course, we voted in the team of that we have right now. It's kind of like in a democracy where I would say, yeah, okay, I voted you in, now please go and make the difficult decisions. And then if you have really like something philosophical or like a big direction, something that's going to take up a year of your time, and there's like an obvious choice, you can do one or the other. And then it's a good time to ask your community, and then it's an interesting thing to vote on. But if you just, every week want to rebalance some small things, I think you're going to see that a lot of your community, and you'll know this better than I do, but I think you'll see that a lot of people go like, it's probably okay, whatever you decide. So I don't think that's the best for engagement, but happy to be corrected on that if that's not the case. And of course, if anyone else has an opinion to chime in, they're welcome to.
Yeah, maybe I would like to add something. I mean, I'm running a non-financial application like Notex Editor, right, on Avalanche. And if you run something like that where you just give NFT certificates to people for their own content, then I don't think governance or something like that is necessary. But if you start, I don't know, managing other people's money with your smart contracts, then some sort of deferred governance. I agree totally with I don't know who was it who said within 6 months or not before 6 months you should then introduce something like that. I think that's very reasonable to be able to push forward your project quickly.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like governance and the optimal DAO model, it's kind of like politics, right? Like you either like fully decentralized and leaderless, and then you're on the other side, you're like a dictator, like very centralized. And I think probably the optimal model is like somewhere in between, like a democracy where the users get to vote in a team, and then once that team is voted in, then they have the power to make decisions. And then any kind of like big protocol changes, it has to be voted in like as it is in Congress or Parliament or whatever.
Maybe one should also make a distinction between infrastructure projects like Avalanche itself, which serve as a base layer, which is more important to govern, which is, I guess, coming at some point, and like app projects, which can be very much driven by an individual or a company. So, so I tend to distinguish between those two layers, and I'm much more stringent on infrastructure projects like Ethereum or Avalanche, stuff like that, but much more lenient and trusting the project leaders who are driving their own projects.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. Like, yeah, infrastructure projects, probably you should be much more decentralized early on. What was I gonna say? Chef was gonna say something.
I can ask another question and give you a moment to think about it, Fish, if you want. So on the topic of governance, right? We see that what is the right kind of level of engagement that you need for a proposal to pass. I think on Pangolin we saw for the first time the proposal to add, I think, PNG pairs to BNB. It didn't get enough engagement or so, right? And then on the other hand, you see on Uniswap, I think it was, where basically a proposal kind of got pushed through by a few wallets, and that basically allocated funds to themselves. Like, where is the do you have an opinion on what the optimum engagement limit is for something to be considered a valid vote?
Yeah, I can comment on this for a bit. This is Leo or BestCoderNA. So, at Pangolin, it's hard to decide and measure upfront how much people will engage because working on a project or being a contributor, you're looking at the space all day, every day. So it's kind of sometimes you forget that some of the users out there, some of the investors, they only check in, once a week, a couple times a week, and they don't have the level of awareness and interest to be voting on very critical initiatives or the non-critical ones too. So you're right. At first we set a high quorum because we thought, okay, this percentage of total tokens could be easily met, and we were nowhere near that. To give some metrics, I think under 100 people voted, even though we pushed the marketing pretty hard on it, and there's something like 13 or 14,000 token holders, right? So a very small percentage of wallets with voting power actually came in, read the proposal, and voted. And so that kind of was just a little bit more information for us to adjust our parameters, right? We realized, okay, so there's not as much engagement as we thought there would be, but that's okay. If that's how the community dynamics are, we can adjust to it to work with that, right? And I think, like you mentioned, another topic of whales, and that's definitely something to consider in governance as well. There could be 1,000 small wallets voting one way, and then one big wallet comes and just wipes out that vote in the other direction. So, it's up to kind of communities and projects to decide, is that fair to have one wallet be able to overpower hundreds of wallets, or should it be different? So there's a lot of parameters to think about when adding governance. What do you guys think?
I've had a lot of thoughts about this because you know how it is to run a DEX. Like you have your token holders who are one of your primary stakeholders, but then you also have to think about like other metrics like TVL and volume. And if you always like let your token holders decide, then it might be that you're not creating like favorable environments for people to add liquidity and and trade as well. I think this is quite hard. This is definitely a really hard issue. Like obviously the token holders should have a lot of power, and also as you said, like there's whales as well. They can wipe out things, but you also think like maybe they're doing it for their own interest. Like they might say, okay, I want to have this because I want to farm in this pool, but it might not be the best thing overall, because as like a product owner, you have to see things from like a bird's eye view. You have to think, okay, you have your token holders one side, you have your liquidity providers on another side, and then you have the users who just like come here to trade, right? So always like giving your token holders the power to vote on everything. It might be that they will vote in favor of what's beneficial for them, but not beneficial for the other stakeholders, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then of course, I know Notex editor. You have some opinions on Genie and basically whales and stuff, right? And you already mentioned, if I may ask you a question as well. You already mentioned, of course, you look at infrastructure projects differently from the DEXs. But do you have an opinion on like how whales should behave on DEXs as well, and maybe how projects should prepare for that? Or anyone else, really, if they want to speak up.
Well, I'm not. I'm actually just a simple user of DEXs. I like using them, and I personally pretty much avoid DEX tokens because I don't really understand them, because I can't. I simply personally don't have the time to engage with them. But I mean, in general, I mean, what do you want to do if you run a project, right? Do you want to run a plutocracy where people with more money can vote more, or do you want to run one person, one vote kind of system? That's something people have to decide for. Every project has to decide for their own projects themselves, because yeah, otherwise you have all this discussion between whales and non-whales. So I mean, on the other hand, if you have a whale who is invested into your ecosystem, and then you have some somebody who is loud, somebody like me, for example, and who just who just keeps complaining without having invested that much money. That's also in some sense unfair, right? So you really have to look at the project and what kind of project you're you're working with, and how you want to attract capital. I mean, if you want to attract capital, maybe giving a proportional vote to everybody depending on their money invested is a smart idea. But if you want to attract a lot of people, then just giving a vote per person, which is at the moment very hard to implement because DID, distributed identities, on the roadmap but not implemented yet. So that's also something interesting. What I mean, I have a project where I would like to realize something like projects where people vote capitalistically, or projects where they vote, with the square root of their investment, and or where they vote per person, and then projects can set up themselves in such a way. Maybe a charity project doesn't need to vote for the amount of invested money. So you really have to distinguish per project. Is it a capitalistic for profit project, or is it some other kind of app project? So this is important at the moment. I mean, at the moment, everybody is so focused on decentralized finance, but I mean, Vitalik just put a big emphasis on this, right? So there is so much more we can do with the technology, and then you will have these different forms of governance structures, which we can also discuss. But at the moment, everybody is so much focused on finance. The logical thing to that kind of emerges is, okay, it's kind of a shareholder company, and people vote with the money they have invested.
Some very fair points, I think, there, especially, yeah, not every app is the same, of course. And I think that's very good. That's also of you to remind us of that as well. I see that we're coming up on the hour. Actually, we've already reached the hour. So I want to ask my speakers or anyone else in this call if they want to speak up any last comments, and then I think we should be at a good moment to close this.
Yeah, thanks for hosting us, CoderNA. This has been really awesome. I appreciate everyone for attending. So just the final point I want to touch on is this concept of growing the pie. There's a lot of competing projects in Avalanche, but Avalanche is still very tiny compared to the other networks, Ethereum, BSC, Polygon. And I think right now is not the time to be competing within Avalanche. It's the time to be growing Avalanche. So as users, as project builders, let's try to adopt this mentality of let's grow the ecosystem for everyone. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I just want to say a big shout out to CoderNet for hosting this. Yeah, like Leo said, like Avalanche is still really young, and it's great to see a lot of projects coming on board. Like Sherpa last night, when they launched, that was great. Definitely gave a big boost to community, and we're also excited for more projects. I think Benki's coming out soon, and Yak as well with their token. But yeah, things are looking great, and just really looking forward to like growing the community. We definitely need more projects on Avalanche. I think that's like the one thing that we really need most.
Well, the good news is I think we've got some really cool stuff coming up. And of course, the bridge came up recently, and I think Webble is quite interesting as well. Banky, of course, they're all Lego bricks that are building to something cool. But for now, everyone, I think we'll call off the spaces here. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Thanks to the speakers for speaking up. Thanks for the community also for speaking up and joining the conversation when they could. Shout out to FXholic as well for helping with the graphic and promoting the event. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and maybe see you in the next one. Bye bye.
See you guys.
Looking forward to it.
So yeah,